Everyone, I'm calling to order the Middleton School Committee meeting. It is 5:31 on February 3rd, 2025. This meeting is recorded. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I am not seeing any remarks from the public. We'll move on to approve the meeting minutes. There are two sets of minutes in the folder. The first one is from our January 6th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes from January 6th, say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay. And then moving on to reports from other committees. Jackie, did you have anything?
Just quickly, the CPAC is hoping to.
Oh, I'm sorry. There were two sets of minutes.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Okay.
Budget meeting.
Yes, the budget meeting from,
The 25th.
yep. The 125 budget meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor of accepting the minutes from January 25th, say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, thank you. All right, Jackie, sorry.
CPAC is hoping to offer later this month. I think we're aiming for the 25th or the 27th. People can keep an eye on our social media pages to offer a workshop through the Federation for Children with Special Needs on bullying and what parents need to know as far as like the laws go. Still working that out with the special ed office, but I'm hoping to offer that at the end of this month, and that will be our meeting for this month.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, moving on, reports from the superintendent.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. A couple of updates from the superintendent's office. MSBA. There's a folder in the drive actually called MSBA. If you double click on that, please and thank you. It reads MSBA info. The first one is the ARP, or Accelerated Repair Program for a Fuller Meadow roof. So I put a little clip, or a snippet rather, of one of the documents that we were working from. There were a number of things that we had due to the state for the ARP program for the Fuller Meadow roof. We had a compliance certificate that was due. The program commenced, as you can see at the top there, on November 1st, so 90 days out from that was January 30th. So we have submitted that. Steve had to do, we had to enter into an online system and enter maintenance and capital planning information that has been done on the roof over the course of its life, all the work that we've done. Local authorization for schematic design funds, that would have been the vote at town meeting last May, and then a certified copy of the local vote, which is basically a raised seal copy from Eileen certifying that they were done. So we actually got everything in by January 30th. We weren't going to wait until the March 1st deadline, so we have sent that all to the state. So we are in, at the moment, good standing, so to speak, and now we wait to hear back from the state on all those things and figure out what next steps will look like. So that piece is moving on. And then the other MSBA piece, this is something that every school in the state is going through right now. If you click on the one that says school survey, the MSBA statute requires that a periodic survey be conducted to assess the elementary and secondary public schools across the Commonwealth. They site visit, believe it or not, 1,580 schools, and they compile all the existing data in approximately 120 schools that are currently in the MSBA's pipeline. This will result in a published report sharing an understanding of the building condition and general environment of the Commonwealth public schools. And so we have had two items associated with that in two of our towns. We had an online interview with some MSBA folks, Jen, Jeff, Steve, and myself. And then they came out and did a site visit. We met, we talked about the building, and then they walked the building to take some notes, answer some questions. And we've had this also done in Boxford, and we'll be starting the Topsfield process in a couple of weeks. But they are basically visiting every single school. I think the last time they did this was around 10 or 11 years ago, sort of like a state of the schools across the entire Commonwealth. So they have a sense of what, programmatically, how old all the roofs are across the state, and all the boiler rooms, and all the different things associated with facilities and things that Mass School Building Authority would be involved in. So we can check that box. We have completed our surveys. Also in the drive, you will see the CREST annual report. Last meeting, we talked about the NEC annual report. So if you find the PDF in the drive that reads annual report for 2024 for CREST, very similar to the NEC report, this is another one of our collaboratives that we worked with for students that have diverse learning needs, whose needs we can't meet in the regular education program. So it starts with Executive Director Bob Jokela's welcome and overview. On page 4, you can see the board and who is comprised of that board of CREST, superintendents mostly across the sort of North Shore and Merrimack Valley area. And then as you scroll through, you get through like the meet the teams, the vision and their mission overall, their funding, and then similar to NEC, you'll get into their different programs that they have at CREST. And they have a number of programs that they offer. Merrimack Academy High School, the lower school, the upper school, Essex Academy, and so on and so forth. So just something for your purview and interest. There's a topic under new business that'll be connected back to this as it relates to CREST in terms of the work that they're doing around member versus non-member tuition, and we'll revisit that when we get down into new business. And then just a final update from me. At our last meeting, Jen let the committee know that this will be her final year. She's retiring on June 30th. And so I asked Brian to pull together for me a report as to where things stand for the Fuller Meadow principal search update. And so the job was posted on January the 8th of 2025. The deadline for applications was January 31st. There was a parent survey and a staff survey administered to gather information and data regarding the qualities the community is looking for in a principal. The search team was formed, consisting of teachers, parents, administrative staff, and members of the leadership team. Brian had the first meeting of that search committee on January 29th, which included the following agenda: confidentiality, reviewing survey results, vision, job description, discussing desired characteristics of a new principal, finalizing and working on interview questions and a rubric, planning for the interviews, and then plan for an application review. Resumes will be reviewed the week of February 3rd, 2025, and interviews will be held on February 12th and February 13th, and Brian will keep us informed of the search committee's progress as we go through that process. So they are underway. Brian leads a very thorough process when we do these types of searches. And we'll keep the committee up to date as we navigate through that work. So happy to answer any questions on any of those items as it relates to MSBA, CREST, and the Fuller Meadow search.
Was there many applicants?
Yeah, good applicant pool.
Okay.
I would say, I think last time I looked, several dozen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Good.
That's going to be tough getting through those. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good process for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else before we move on? No. Okay. All right. Moving over to Steve.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's included in the drive is a financial report for the month of February. And as you go through and look at the summary page, you'll see variances on there. Some of these, most of them, are timing issues with regard to receipts and or expenses, especially in the operating budget 0001 fund. You'll see a variance of $869,000. That has to do with us posting payroll and bill warrants that may not have been posted on the town side yet, that we will be going through with regard to getting ready to wrap up a fiscal year. Be going through all the pieces and real in-depth reconciliation on all the bits and pieces to get ready to close out in June. But that's another discussion. Anyways, I will stop talking and answer any questions for the committee.
So that variance is nothing to be alarmed at?
No, if, when I look at what's going on, the two areas that I'm watching right now are special education tuitions and the insurance line. And so on the insurance line, there's a PO on there. I think I want to make sure we haven't already posted the expense and have it like double booked or double encumbered. So with our new accountant, we'll be sitting down and going through it and, But again, there's not anything I'm worried about. It's more just an accounting piece. There are no issues that I see at this time. It's just timing.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any questions. Anybody else?
Questions?
No?
Brief report, but that's what I got.
All right, reports from the principals.
I'll go first. Maybe the last one, I'll let you go first.
You think?
We'll see.
Hold him to it.
What a guy.
What a guy.
Yeah. The Super Bowl is going on at Howe Manning. The Super Bowl is food collection to benefit Middleton Food Pantry. That started on January 21st. It will run through this Friday. Middleton Food Pantry accepts all donations, but they've highlighted some of the following items that they need: coffee, peanut butter and jelly, spaghetti sauce, soup, rice, cereal, and crackers. So there are collection bins in each pod. Kids can just bring it in and put it in those collection bins, and they will be delivered to the Middleton Food Pantry. Did you get it, the Super Bowl?
Yes, yes.
S-O-U.
Oh, you know that.
Yes.
Now I do.
So, anyway, access testing for English language learners wrapped up the end of last week. We had 11 students complete 44 testing sessions. So the access for ELLs, there's writing, listening, reading, and speaking. Kristen Pepp ran through those, thankfully, did a great job doing that. We are also, believe it or not, moving into MCAS season has officially started. I had a good 10-year run of actually knowing what I was doing. And now they've completely switched platforms.
That's right.
And I ran off about 400 pages of manuals of, I did the registration, that only took me 4 tries, with the spreadsheet that they,
Who's the new vendor?
Cognia.
Okay.
Now I have to figure out how to do the classes and the tickets and train the teachers.
Forgot
It's
about
like
that.
starting all over again.
Yep.
I bear witness to that.
Oh, it's
We had a
brutal.
meeting and he was so confounded. And who was helping you? Amanda?
Yeah, Amanda Sullivan. So DESC puts a spreadsheet in our Dropbox, right, of all of the kids' accommodations for 4 through 6. We have to start over with the 3rd grade. Those are all populated. And then you upload it to their platform. I uploaded it and came up with 887 errors.
For 400 kids?
More than he
Exactly.
put in.
Yep. So every registration was an error, and so I did it again, thinking maybe I hit the wrong button. 887 errors. I tried to fix a couple things. 887 errors. It turns out I had it was the same error in the school code, the grade, and this testing code, which is all like pre-populated, so I couldn't figure it out. Finally figured out that I had to change the testing code to a text box. That fixed that one, and then I had to add a leading 0 to the school code and the grade. It had to be 03, not just grade 3, it had to be grade 03. And so on 5th
But
time.
did it come
the charm-
auto-populated that way?
Yeah.
It was like
I
he hit
can't-
the jackpot when it finally worked.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
The errors
I was-
It's really 3 hours, though.
all the errors were all gone.
Yeah.
So everything was squared away. Now it's just a matter of figuring out the new form of putting them in groups and
Yeah.
everything else. But I anticipate that will go smoother, but we'll see. I got a month and a half to figure it out.
You have runway.
Made me really appreciate a K-2 school for my last
Right,
3 years. I
exactly.
was watching it going, oh,
Yeah, it was,
not fun.
the computer almost went out the window
Yeah.
at one point, but all's good.
That's good.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
So same at Fuller Meadow, the WIDA access tests. Oh my gosh, Kristen Pepp and Liz Santos, amazing job. It's a lot of work. We finished our data meetings last week. It was a good week. It's tricky because we have substitutes to cover and we've had so much illness that we held on, and the folks in the office did a really good job supporting us with that. So we finished those meetings. We looked at math, reading, and SEL, and our WIN group started officially. Is today Monday? Today's Monday. Today. Kim's sitting here, the reading folks do an amazing job. They have to get all the letters out to parents, and so Friday they spent the better part of the day getting ready to communicate all of that to families. Report cards went out on the 24th. I read through all their comments. The teachers put so much effort and time into the details that they provide for families. I mean, I feel like I know the kids well by reading the comments that the teachers write. Very thoughtful, and it also demonstrates how well they know their students when they can speak like that. We had a PD on Monday. All of the elementary teachers got an overview of the new reading curriculum that will be adopted into reading. So that was a big job trying to pull that off. It was a very quick high-level overview of the curriculum itself. Wednesday is the Global Day of Play at Fuller Meadow. It's a fun day for all students. It's a national thing that's been going on for how many years? I wrote down 10 years. And the kids really enjoy it. The teachers thoroughly enjoy it, especially after the 3 big data days that we had last week. So all kinds of fun, creative STEAM activities, board games, all the things that kids really don't often have the time to do, they get to participate in on Wednesday. So it'll be a fun day. PE teacher opens the gym in the morning, and they can play class on class against each other in some kind of fun game, so that everybody looks forward to it. And I think that was it.
Michelle, can I add something to that I forgot, but the play day reminded me?
Yeah.
CPAC, in combination with Boxford, or I guess Masco Youth Basketball, is going to host an inclusion play day on March 1st, Saturday, March 1st, from 3:30 to 5 at the Masco Fieldhouse. All students are welcome, K to 8. And it will be an inclusive, supportive environment. It is not a drop-off event. The flyers will be going out in the newsletter after we get them approved. They'll be going out in the newsletters to all the kids in those grades. And there is a link to register, just so we have an idea of how many families to expect. But along the same lines, to give the opportunity for a little bit structured, not complete chaos, but some inclusive play. It'll be around basketball this time.
Okay, great, thank you. Just going back to the report cards, I know that those just went out like a week or so ago. When we went over like the new report cards, that was kind of told to us that it would be a pilot. Was it decided if the 2 report cards a year and the standard, the way they're presented now, is going to be like the new norm?
Peggy did collect feedback. We can ask her what all that feedback was, but I believe it was positively received from parents and teachers. So I think the goal would be to, move that into a permanent form for sure, but I can have Peggy pull that data for us. She definitely did a lot of surveying on it. People definitely like the conferences, for sure, in October. And a big part of that is getting people into the classroom so they can get to meet their teachers early, have those conversations about the kids, but be happy to have her share that data with us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, just to put in kind of my 2 cents is I do like having the conferences earlier in the year. I think that's very helpful. But I feel that the first report card comes out so late. And then just getting 2 of them, and the last one being the last day of school, it's kind of tough to go back to teachers if you have any questions with how crazy that time of year is. And I get that you're kind of spreading out like the touch points between like the parents and the teachers and have them being like equal distant, and on paper it looks good and makes sense. But to me, like, I don't know, it doesn't really matter to me, like, when those touch points happen. And maybe I'm used to like Masco's format now of getting 3 report cards.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my feedback there.
Okay. Yeah, I will have Peggy pull something together for us, for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving on, new business. I'm not seeing any gifts or grants.
No.
Okay. And then the Crest non-member tuition.
Yep. I'm just making a note on that. Hold on 1 sec. Yep, Crest non-member tuition. So I thought they may have language for a motion tonight, but there's been some dialogue and discussion at the Crest meetings where there's members and non-members who participate. So all the board of directors, we make up the member districts of CREST. And then there are non-member districts that also participate in the CREST program. And I think there's an idea afoot to maybe raise those tuitions a little bit for non-member groups that aren't in the association or aren't in the CREST membership. And so I don't have language tonight to do that, so we'll have to table the motion because I don't have anything from CREST. But just to kind of alert the committee that that's a conversation that's happening at CREST, is a potential to look to raise tuition for non-member districts.
But we're a member.
We are a member, so
Okay.
we would be fine.
Right.
But in order to change the articles of agreement, for lack of a better way to say it, at CREST, it has to go back to all the individual school committees. So in order for them to do that, we would need individual school committees to say, like, yes, we agree with this motion that the board can set the rates for non-member tuition. I think right now it's set at a certain rate, and that doesn't allow for a lot of flexibility. So it would have no impact on us financially,
Okay.
but it would have an impact on non-member districts. And I think right now, non-member and member is like a 50-50 split. I think
Okay.
non-members who attend the CREST Collaborative and members who attend the CREST Collaborative are a 50-50 split. But more to come, I would say. It's more just sort of flagging it for the committee because I don't have any language to present to you tonight.
Okay.
Do you get the sense, like, in general, collaboratives are doing that, or you only know of CREST?
Yeah, it's only, I mean, I sit on two, right? I sit on NEC
Right.
and CREST. And right now, the conversation seems to be mostly more geared towards CREST. I haven't heard much from NEC as to whether that will be something that they pursue moving forward. It is a balance for sure between member and non-member, as Matt has talked about, and you'll see in his report tonight around special education. Like, I think somebody could open another collaborative and probably fill it, right? We have a lot of waiting lists at the collaboratives, and at the private schools, as we know, can charge much more tuition-wise, so we try to use our collaboratives as much as we can. So right now, it's just CREST, though, Jackie. Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on to the school calendar.
So calendar, this is just a draft, initial draft. It's in the drive. It says Middleton draft 25-26. I would say very similar to last school year in terms of the calendar. I would say one difference would be in December, where if you go to December, the holiday break, this past December, just a month or so ago, we sort of started the week out, and then we came back 2 days before, or 2 days right before the first full week after the new year. We came back on January 1st and 2nd. This would have us in school at the beginning of the break. New Year's and Christmas are both on a Thursday that week, and so the 22nd and 23rd we would be in school. We would do an early release on the 23rd leading into the break, and then we would be out. So it's the same amount of time out. It's just shifting the 2 days at the front end versus the back end. We have worked with Masco on this. This is where their calendar is landing as well. That's one conversation we certainly always have to have as it relates to buses and timing and families with kids in two places. The PD day in January, again, we used to do that on a Friday before the Martin Luther King weekend, and we're trying to, again, align with Masco. Masco has a full teacher PD day on the Monday following Martin Luther King weekend, and so you'll see it on the calendar again on the 26th with that happening there. So we have had the conversations with Masco. We've done an initial outreach to, as we always do, our association as well. And this is just a first look for the committee. It's just literally just an informational item, but very similar to this year's calendar, where we'd be coming back the Monday, Tuesday with teachers before Labor Day, and with our students the Wednesday and Thursday before Labor Day. From what I understand from Eileen, there's no voting, like sometimes we've had like state elections or federal elections, and
Yep.
where we've had to, bump some days in the Middleton calendar. I do not think that's the case. We'll triple check that with Eileen. And the goal being, by the time we get to the next presidential, we will be in
The new building.
the new building, which should be great, and we'll be out of the voting game at the Fuller Meadow Elementary School. So just an early draft, but just we'll be kind of proposing it around the three towns during this February timeframe.
Okay. Any questions on that before we move on? I think it's pretty similar to what we're doing this year.
Yeah, almost a rinse and repeat.
Yeah. No.
All right. Review of select board budget meetings. So thank you to Michelle and Dave and Steve and Peggy, who were at the select board. It was a combination select board FinCon meeting on Saturday. They do a capital meeting in a few weeks, but this was their department by department meeting. I put the presentation in the drive. It says Middleton SB 2125. So you can see some of the slides that we had shared at that meeting. Just kind of talked about our vision and our goals and what we try to accomplish in our district. And you know, you guys have heard me say this before at this meeting, that a child born today is entering the workforce in 47 and 48, and what will school look like, and what are the knowledge, skills, dispositions, and competencies that our kids will need as we prepare them for that future workforce. And that led to the idea, as this committee has heard me talk about before, that it's important that we look at the budget with a microscope and also a telescope. We have to make sure that we are being prudent in our planning, but also making sure we're planning for the future and setting our kids up for success as they navigate through our school district. And then Peggy went into an abbreviated version of the committee, what they saw at their budget meeting a couple of Saturdays ago on the ELA curriculum that we will be pursuing across the 3 towns to implement in the fall of this year. So I would say productive meeting for sure. Got some good dialogue and discussion happening at that meeting from our partners as it related to, you know, the curriculum program and overrides and some other things. And so all very initial in terms of the work, but I don't know if you had any different reaction or takeaways. Michelle or Dave, you guys were both there as well.
No, it was a good meeting. I know we had the school committees, it's our budget meeting on the 25th, and I don't believe that meeting was recorded, but just so everybody's aware, there's kind of 2 items that we're dealing with in regards to the budget this year, which is the operating budget, and you know, we are looking at an override, even though we're staying level service. And then also the warrant article, which would be this new ELA curriculum into reading. And, you know, it looks like a very good curriculum. Peggy was really excited about it. The materials looked really nice. And all the teachers that were on the committee to choose this curriculum voted unanimously to try to move forward with it. So I think there were some questions from the select board on Saturday on, you know, if we would have to pay the sum up front, or if
2-year period.
yeah,
Plus,
but
or could they spread it-
over
they
the
spread
course of
over
like 2 years. So I think we're waiting to get those answers back.
Yep.
But
Yep.
the cost would be $275,000, and that would cover everything that we needed for 6 years.
Which is, as we said, is a normal curricular review cycle, so that would
Yep.
be a win for sure.
Yeah. And then in terms of the budget, we were still waiting on to come in, one being insurance.
Yep.
Has that come in yet, Steve? No.
If anything, it feels like it may be trending a little bit higher. Is that a fair comment?
I think it's fair for right now. That's the rumor out there. You know?
Carrying 10 and
Yeah, we're carrying 10.
could be higher. So that will obviously, you know, have an impact
Yes.
on the budget.
Okay.
I think it was well received, though, for the most part, when we spoke to the select board.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. They're very early, all very early preliminary discussion. We'll have a capital meeting with them. I think that's at our capital Saturday meeting with the Select Board and FinCom. We'll revisit the curriculum item as well. They might look at that as a capital item or free cash or warrant article or something along those lines. So we'll navigate that as we continue through the process for sure.
Okay. And it looks like we're going to talk about the budget a little
Yep.
bit more.
In a few minutes.
In a few minutes.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Okay, moving on to student service update.
All right, good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm just going to walk you through some updated special ed numbers. This is something we typically present on a yearly basis. It's really an informative piece just as we talk about all things special ed in Middleton and the Tri-Town. I think it's always helpful to dive a little bit deeper into the data and the numbers. This is less a kind of curriculum and that logic model conversation that we've had, Peggy and I, and more about what are we seeing for eligibility numbers, referral numbers, and what does that mean for our district as a whole. So there's a presentation in the drive for you. So, you know, I always started off with our overall goal, which is obviously to help every student in the district to reach their maximum potential. That's done through extensive professional development, any behavioral, social, emotional supports, academic supports, and program development, which is what we can constantly strive to develop and grow. I'm going to take you through 3 different pieces of the department tonight. And again, I just want to say that we'll talk about student services as a whole, which includes other pieces of the puzzle, nursing, we do homeless and other components, and I want to take everybody under that umbrella. Tonight we're going to focus a little bit more on the special ed piece. So as I take you through this, we're going to talk about federal and state funding, how that relates to how we run our programming, student and program information, which includes our information about inclusion and eligibility, and then just a little quick piece on state compliance. So if you look at the federal and state, a lot of this is not going to be new information that you see. This is built into the budget year over year, and we just looked at it a couple of weeks ago when we looked at the budget. For the fiscal pieces, I did include
You're on
Oxford.
slide 5, right?
I'm sorry, I'm on slide 5.
Yep.
Yep. So it's the entitlement grant awards is the title of the slide. So for the financial part of the presentation, I did include Boxford and Topsfield in there just as a little bit of a reference. Obviously, we're focused more on Middleton, but you can see here the entitlement grant, the IDA grant, the commonly known as the 240, is an entitlement grant. What that means is that I do have to apply for that year over year, but it's something we are going to get. It's not a competitive grant where, they have X amount of dollars and there's 50 districts trying to get money from that grant, and we have to write a whole report to try to gain that. We still have to apply for it year over year, but it's an entitlement grant. So at usually in about July, we get information from the state about how much money that's going to be, and then I have to have that information into them to apply for the grant by the end of August. We get that money. That is something that is done fiscal year based, right? So this is the FY25 money. This is what's in the current year budget. So for the 240 this year, it was a little over $205,000, and there's a second part of that, which is just focused on ages 3 to 5. So that's what you'll see is the early childhood 262, and that was a little, just under $12,000. That is predominantly allocated towards supporting some staff salaries, professional development, supplies and materials, and then some other components. Our DASH program is supported through this grant, which is the disability awareness, and a few other components. Steve and I, Steve brought it up during the budget meetings. One of the things we always look at this is we don't want it to support too much of the staff salary piece of it, because as soon as you do that, it automatically takes out MTRS funds. So you have to then reallocate. If you put, again, round numbers, $10,000 towards a salary, it's not just $10,000, it's $12,000 or $14,000 because it has to account for the other components of it. So sometimes the better use of it is to put it towards professional development supplies or other things that can be utilized. But right now, it does support some staff salaries and those other components. It's a major factor in our professional development year over year, I will say that. So speakers coming in, it's been really important this year as we rolled out the new IEP into the district, and the trainings that we were able to do, and the presenters that we were able to bring in, and have staff attend training. So it's a relatively stable amount of money over the past 5 years. I would say it hasn't fluctuated more than, under $10,000 up or down, a couple $1,000s every year. So it's relatively stable.
Matt, can I ask a question? How do they determine how each town gets allocated the amount? Is it a budget?
Yeah.
Is it a budget?
Yeah, I was
Sorry.
thinking about that question,
Yep.
because I figure there's so many, there's factors around the amount of eligible students, the amount of students you have in your district, and then there's a whole bunch of other pieces that go into it, kind of like the Chapter 70 funding piece of it that I wish I could explain a little bit more, but
No, I was just curious.
yeah,
They all vary-
it's,
they all
I mean, the
vary.
major components are special ed students, the amount of students you have, and then there's other factors built into it. But as you can see, if you look at that, obviously Topsfield brings in less money. They're just a smaller district overall, so it's more based on the size. The second major financial driver that we talk quite a bit on the next slide is circuit breaker. Again, this is something that we talk about a lot during budget season. This is listed as, this is where the quirk comes in, but I think it's important to talk about. This says circuit breaker FY24. These are actually the numbers that we're working with for FY25. This is what's claimed at the end of FY24, right? Which then we get reimbursed for FY25. So you can see here the net claim. So the total claim we put in was about $281,000, and the reimbursement at 75% is about $211,000. That is funds for each student above $50,000 or four-time foundation. You get reimbursed up to 75%. again, a budget item that we talk about year
Who are
over year.
placed at an out-of-district place.
That are placed, well, it doesn't necessarily have to
Or
be.
in
It's for any students whose education costs above $50,000. That is 99% of the time a student that is an out-of-district placement. If there's a student who is not out-of-district but may require a one-to-one nurse in some significant medical equipment, sometimes that could get up to that amount. But Scott's right, typically it is 99% of the time, especially for us as a district, it's going to be a student who is out-of-district.
So that $211,000 is the money that we're working with in our current budget?
Current budget, right, because the claim is at the end of FY '24. We have to have those numbers in at the end of the year, so that's why it says FY '24, but that is what we're using in this current year budget. As we talked about going into next year, for FY '26, I anticipate circuit breaker will be stable, and then going into FY '27, I think the circuit breaker number is going to be much higher, right, because it'll be based on next year's tuitions, which are higher. Okay?
Can you
Yeah.
remind me, I know Medicaid is federal and IDEA is federal. Is circuit breaker state or federal?
Circuit breaker comes from the state. I don't know if there's a federal law governing it, but it's submitted to the state. It's state.
And we,
That's why it fluctuates based on the state budget on whether they provide up to 75%.
and so we have in our proposed budget for next year, all of this in there. If something happens to the Department of Education, there was a bill introduced the 31st, and say IDEA doesn't come through, what we have right here is close to $500,000. How far out do we start thinking about where we're getting $500,000 from?
Between for the federal grants?
Yeah.
I haven't received any very specific information that there's, like, to me, when there's something like that, we get constant communication from the department about things that may or may not come through. I would hope that if there's a significant concern that that's not going to come through, that I would get as quick notice as possible, and that to me is when it would trigger I would bring it to you and say, hey, I just got this notice that we should be concerned about this. But I don't know, Scott, if you've seen anything, but I haven't seen a complete red flag to say you should be worried about the entitlement grants at this
No,
point.
I would say, Jackie, if anything happened federally,
Yeah.
from what I understand, based on what I've read and seen, money would just be given to the states, instead of being managed federally, which happens at the Federal Department of Education. It would be managed at the state level. I would be very surprised if our state took a different approach to distribution of those funds, right? I think instead of it sitting at some federal office somewhere and someone saying, okay, Middleton gets 200 and, well, I'm in the circuit breaker one, but Middleton gets 205,000 from the 240 grant, right? Like, I think it would just go right to our state Department of Education, and they would manage more of the distribution of that as opposed to maybe at the federal level. So that's what I'm hearing early on, but I think to Matt's point, we've heard nothing yet, but I think it would fall in that category. Yeah.
So then the last fiscal piece that I just mentioned, which is something you don't typically see in the budget, is the Medicaid and the Medicare. So what that is that's a reimbursement to the districts for services that could otherwise be paid for by insurance, but they may happen during the day. So typically that's physical therapy, occupational therapy, and sometimes in speech and language. What happens is we track those services for student that might be Medicaid, Medicare eligible. We're able to submit that to the state, and then this reimbursement comes back. The reason why you don't typically see that on a budget sheet is because this money goes directly back to the town. This doesn't come back to the school budget, so this money goes directly back to the town. Okay, so there's no line to say, like, you can find the circuit breaker offset in our budget, you can find the 240 offset in our budget. You're not going to find a Medicare offset in our budget. But that is something that our related service staff typically do, is they track it, and we submit for that reimbursement. It goes back to the town.
Submitted directly to the town.
Right. Yep. Okay, and so now shifting away from the financial and talking about students and program information. If you go to step 9, I like to start off this conversation always about our inclusive practices. So as a reminder to those that have been on the committee and newer information to the newer committee members, when a student is on an IEP, categorized under the percentage of time that they spend in the general education classroom is what's categorized as their inclusive, what category they fall into. So if a student is on an IEP, but they still spend at least 80% of their day in the general education classroom, then they are considered full inclusion students. You can see here, partial inclusion would be a student who spends anywhere between 40% of their day to 79% of their day in the general education classroom, and then substantially separate means that they're spending less than 40% of their day in the general education classroom. Again, I think it's important on a slide like this to just kind of look at us as a tri-town whole, because this is clearly our philosophy. It's one of our pillars that we look at. We do, I think our buildings and our teachers just do an amazing job with our inclusive practices in making sure that we're making the right decisions about students and the service that they need while maintaining the knowledge of making sure that we have them in with their peers. So what I want to note on this one for Middleton is if you look at the full inclusion at 71%, 71.5%, that looks a lot lower than the other two towns, but as you scroll across, you can then see under the substantially separate, it's at 8%, which seems a lot higher than the other two towns. There's a very specific reason for that. It's been this way for years, and it's because in Middleton we do have some very specialized programs for students with high levels of need, which is amazing to have those students in our district and get these very specific services in these programs. But that changes the inclusive numbers, right? Those students still do as much inclusion as possible out of that program, but Middleton is one of our only towns that have these real specialized programs. So that's why you'll see that off a little bit. So if you take that into account, then these numbers are very similar across all three.
Question on that. So I know in the past, then Middleton has had students from other districts in those programs. Is that reflected in Middleton's numbers or the other towns' numbers?
It would be reflected because, again, the quirk of the tri-town is if a student is in another town, even if one of our programs, then they would get back categorized from the sending town as an out-of-district student. So they wouldn't be included in these numbers. So these are all Middleton.
Those are all Middleton
These are all
residents?
Middleton residents. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. And then just to dive a little bit more now specifically into eligibility, this is something that we keep year over year. These numbers are based on December 1st of every school year. The reason for that is because that's when we submit them to the state. And since we've been doing it that way for so many years, it's a nice way to do some comparison data, and you'll see that in the next couple of slides. But just to walk you through this is, by school, the number of students that are on IEPs, the number of students in the building, and then obviously the eligibility percentage. It is not unusual to see this upper building to have a higher eligibility percentage, especially if they contain third grade, because that's a very big referral grade. So it's not a surprising thing to see that Fuller Meadow is at 16%, and how many is it? Almost 24%. That's a common time for referral. What that does is you put those together. Middleton's overall special ed percentage eligibility rate is 20.6. I can tell you that year over year that is down from at one point as a district about 25%. So it is trending. The eligibility is trending down back to where we kind of had been before a lot of the pandemic stuff. We used to be about 18 to 20% as a district in all three of our districts. Then we saw a big spike up to like 25, 26%. Almost 27%, I think, one year. We were pushing up there, and things have started to kind of come back to where we were at that point. I anticipate that will take, several more years. The other thing that we'll continue to track, obviously, and the work that we do closely with, Peggy and her team is all, the new, everything that she has talked about, all the logic model stuff we've talked about, all the new curriculums, is that having an effect on our referrals and eligibility as well. So we'll track that over the next several years. State average, last time I checked, was well over 21, 22%. So at this point now we are, Middleton is under the state average for eligibility.
Matt, didn't the state average used to be close to 17 or 18? So did
It
that
was. It's
swing
all got. Yeah,
happen
that was
across the board?
it was all. Yep. I think right before actually the pandemic, it had hit 20 for the first time ever.
Oh, okay.
So it was starting to trend up, and then it just spiked. Okay. And this is just to show you a little bit of how we track this and kind of use this for trending and conversations. There's a lot of information in the next couple slides that, that do just that. I think it's good to always watch over several years to kind of see the trends. This slide number 11, the referral data, talks about the amount of, and we really started doing this during the pandemic and then post it to look at the number of referrals that are coming from parents. So parents can refer a student for a special education evaluation and the school can refer a student for a special ed eval. And it's just, again, pertinent data points to see, how many parent referrals did we get last year? How many school referrals did we get? And then of those, how many students were found eligible? And it's just really good data to have. So, last year, the 23-24 school year, you can see here there were 9 parent referrals at Fuller, 12 school referrals for a total of 21, and 71% of those students, 71% of those 21 students were found eligible for IEPs. A little bit of a contrast at Hal Manning, and again, this is something that we'll talk about and kind of work through, is that last year at Hal Manning, there were 13 parent referrals and 1 school referral. Again, the grade levels do make a difference in that, for a total of 14, but of those 14, only 35% of the kids were eligible. That's a number I always want to look at and keep an eye on, because what we want to convey both to everybody, to parents and to the school, is the referral process is not a quick, easy, we just do it and it's done. It's a very intensive process, which includes a very intensive process for the student, right? So the student is pulled out of class quite a bit. There's a lot that goes into it. And so, it's not a time to just get to know more about your child. It's a time to really talk about, is there an area of suspected disability? And if there is, let's find out and then determine if they need specially designed instruction. So, that's a little bit of a 13 to 1 is that was something that I kind of looked at and went, no, that's a conversation.
Can I ask a question? If
Yeah.
a parent asks for a referral for their child,
Yep.
there's an immediate need for an evaluation, correct? Do all those children automatically get?
Yeah, so a parent always has the right to request an evaluation.
Yeah.
If there are no,
Preliminary.
if the student is doing really well and it's a conversation, typically what'll happen is, even if they're not, it'll be a phone call to that parent, right? To talk to them about why they may want an evaluation. What is it they're looking for? Sometimes when that conversation takes place, the parent says, I had no idea. Like, nope, I don't want to do it. And then it just is over. At the end of the day, the regulations are that if a parent really wants to go through the evaluation process, then they have the right to do that. The process is always about evaluating in the areas of suspected disability. So that's like the first question is, what are your concerns? What areas of, what suspected disability areas do you think your child has needs in? And that's where the conversation starts to really come together. But yeah, it's one of the.
There's a little bit of vetting if somebody makes a call. There is a phone call initially.
Oh yeah, it's not like, it's always a discussion. There's always conversation, yep.
Okay.
And then you can just see preschool is on here too, so 16 referrals for preschool last year as well. So if you jump to the next one, the next two just do a little bit of a deeper dive. This was a 5-year at one point. I've kind of expanded it out now because I just keep adding it to it. At some point, I'll kind of pull off the front end of it. So as you're looking at this, what you're seeing is kind of a heat map of referrals and students that are eligible. The blue-purple color is the highest number of these 7 years of referrals, whether it's in the parent category or the school category. So, again, if I want you to look at both 12 Fuller Meadow, and then if you go down to Hal Manning, what you're going to notice, which was very interesting to me, and we're going to do some more work on it, but I have a little bit of a theory, is that the 22-23 school year actually had, at Hal Manning, it was the most referrals both from parents and from the school in a 7-year span. And at Fuller Meadow, it was the most parent referrals we've had and almost the most school referrals we've had as well. So, the kind of question is, what are we talking about for 22-23? And if you look at the timing, it's a very interesting and I know we've kind of moved on from the pandemic, and I really want to, but I do, we've talked about how it's not as easy as saying we're back and this is no effect. So it's interesting to look, if you go by column, 1920 referrals, right? We closed in the spring of 20. So I would expect those to be less, just because we had 3 months where we didn't do evaluations, right? 2021 was either, not in Middleton, but it was either hybrid or very, we all remember that year, right? It was the masks, it was all that stuff. So 21-22 was the first year we were kind of back in full, no masks, no real precautions, all of that stuff. To me, that was the year that everybody took a deep breath and said, okay, everybody's back in school, there's no restrictions, there's no distance restrictions, let's get all the kids back on track, and let's see how we can get their skills back and kind of keep going. I think the 22-23 referrals are because certain kids were not getting back to the norm as quick as possible, right? So then we saw a spike in referrals, and now it's starting to trend back to not. So that's kind of a preliminary look. I've talked to some people about why they think that is. We'll continue to look into that. But the other thing to note is there's not, other than seeing kind of the heat mapping, there's no, every year is a little bit different. There's no specific trend where it said 7 years ago they were 10 and now they're 15 and then they went to 20. It's just not the way kids work either, especially in small districts. On any given year we could have cohorts of students that have higher needs and cohorts of students that have lower needs, but it doesn't mean we don't track it and try to have good conversations about it. It helps drive our programming too.
Are you tracking, we don't have it here,
You don't have
but
it.
it would be interesting to look at the referral category, like the category areas.
Yep.
To see, again, like specifically with the literacy.
Yep.
To see where that comes out in another year or so, to see if there's fewer parent referrals around that, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's the next several years that's going to be an important piece as we talk about the literacy component to it. The other thing that somebody brought up to me, and I was like, that could be a good thing to look at too, as we look at the increase for the 22-23. Over the 2021 and 2022 year, there was a lot of guidance from the state around dyslexia
What
and
I
the
was gonna
dyslexia
say.
guidelines.
I think that's probably
Right.
most of it.
So
What year was that?
it came out in late 21, so then it was digested in 21, 22. I
And
think
it's heightened.
so that was, I think, a component to all of that spike in 22, 23 as well, is that there was the dyslexia guidelines that came. There was a law that went in front of the state, and then there was the guidance that came out from DESE all around dyslexia, and I think that probably played a component too. So really, that's just, again, we like to update you on kind of the work that we do to track all this and develop programming. The only thing I just wanted to finish with on your radar is every 3 years, which turned into every 2 years because they do it a 2-year span now, the district is selected to do what's now called the Integrated Monitoring Review. It's a DESE audit, basically, of everything that we do around special education. It's around eligibility, it's our files, it's visiting our buildings, civil rights, all of that. So we had completed it a couple years ago, but now since it's a 2-year cycle, we're up again this spring for some work, and then they'll be out to visit us next fall. Again, civil rights, special education, ELL, they'll look at all of our processes and procedures. They'll randomly pull 20 to 30 files from my office and just go through all of those to see what the timelines look like and all of that piece. I would anticipate we'll have some sort of report next spring, which then I'll bring to you to kind of review and to present as well. So that'll be in process over the next year and a half.
Does the state have any requirement of what you need to have for ELL teachers in regard to the population of the students that need it?
Yeah, it's not the number of teachers, just meeting the minutes that we talked about that last time,
Okay.
right? So the 90 minutes a day for
Okay.
levels 1 and 2, and then 40,
But
60
no,
minutes, 40, but
how-
it's just
number of
getting those
teachers.
done,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the same situation with IEPs, right? If you write a grid for services, you're just going to you need to be able to meet those with qualified staff.
Okay.
So they will be looking at all of our ELL stuff as well.
Yep.
Matt, I think in the past too, that with the the monitoring, I think they reached out to the CPAC, so.
Yeah, so it'll all be next year, so I'll update probably in the fall of when they're coming out. They haven't told us what, so you have to pull all sorts of documents together the year before. That's what we'll be doing this spring, submit them a bunch of documents. Then they come out to visit the following year. That typically includes a reach out to CPAC. It'll be a blast out for a survey for all special ed parents. And then not only the reach out to CPAC, but typically whoever our chairperson is running our review from the state will come to a CPAC meeting and present what it's all about. So that'll all happen next fall. We could be picked, they could come out in November or they could come out in March. We'll know that over the summer when they're gonna come out. So yeah, so that's all the information, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the budget discussion.
Great, yep, so Steve talked a little bit about this at the top in the financial report. Just an opportunity to kind of further unpack some of the information from our Saturday budget meeting. One of the items that came up at that meeting that more information was requested on, or just an opportunity to take a little bit more of a review, it was just around enrollment. So if you go into the drive, you'll see a folder titled Enrollment. And I put in there, if you open the PDF first, which is from NESDEC, and if you bear with me for 1 second and go to slide slide 6. If you go to slide 6, make it a little bit bigger, obviously, because it is teeny tiny. So this is the 10 years out, right? This is the one where it talks about, okay, if you look at the very top there, it reads birth year on slide 6. The title of it is Enrollment Projections by Grade. So birth year was 2019. There were 54 births in town. So that means in the 24-25 school year, what did it look like? So this is the year that we're living. So 65 in pre-K, 77 in K, and these might be plus or minus a little bit based upon just a week-over-week stuff. 88, 107, 101, 193, 106. Anything after this year, which is what we're living, is an estimate for sure. And so if you look at the following row, you see the 25-26 school year, and you'll see 65 for pre-K, and they're estimating now 77 for K, and then you can see the 77 in K go up to 1. If you look at the 88 in first grade this year, they're projecting, picking up 3 kids or so to get to 91 kids in second grade. If you see the 107 in second grade for this year on the top row, and you look down to the following year of third grade, they move up, they become 108, so they're predicting a gain of 1 there. Third grade to fourth grade, they're predicting a gain of 2. Fourth grade to fifth grade, they're predicting a gain of 1. Fifth grade to sixth grade, they're predicting 93 to 92. So you have some, we'll call it outage at sixth grade, right? We have a higher sixth grade class than we do a fifth grade class this year. So if you look at that sixth grade going out, you can see then why enrollment would be down a little bit. And then if you follow one more year, go to the third row, now we're into 26, 27. Again, it's a projection, it's a forecast, right? It's really tough to predict. They're estimating that based on the 76 births in 21, that we'll have 109 kids in kindergarten in the 26-27 school year, and then that bubble will float through in the ensuing years. And then the following year, in 2022, there were 72 births, and they predict 103 kids in kindergarten, and then you can start to see that bubble would roll through over the course of time. So again, anything beyond this year is a projection or a forecast. They do try to root it in something. And you can see in the left-hand column that they try to root it in births. And so you had 54 and 19, 54 and 20, 76 and 21, which maybe that had something to do with everybody being home in 20. And so we had more births in 21. And then in the following year, we had 72 births. And so you can see what that does to the kindergarten numbers. So if you back out of that or close that and look at the other document, that's a snip from our last meeting. Steve had put this table together, and this is in the budget doc, right? So if you go to our budget doc online, and you click on the enrollment tab. I just snipped it from there. But now you can see, okay, 25 school year, FY '25, which is what we're in. There's our 77, 88, 107, 101, 193, 106. And so we had 38 sections, 566, 5556. And you can see the average class size. Then Steve looked at the NESDEC enrollment in sections for FY '26. As we know, sections in enrollment are always subject to change a year out. But NESDEC thinks that we'll have, and we're going to ask Jen this question in a minute if she has an update on enrollment, but NESDEC thinks we'll have 77 kindergarten kids come in, and then last year, now if you work left to right, last year 77 in kindergarten go to grade 1, last year, this year. On the left-hand side, grade 1 is 88. Again, NESDEC was predicting 91 in grade 2. The 107 becomes 108, the 101 becomes 103, the 100 becomes 101, the 93 becomes the 92. So enrollment is down. We had 672 this year, and the projection with that sixth grade outage and lower kindergarten enrollment is about 649. And so you can see what 38 sections does there in terms of average class size. So that may end up being a budget discussion and conversation for sure. Jen, from a enrollment packets coming in and registration and all
Yeah,
that fun stuff?
it's a little tricky. My secretary was out sick all last week, so a lot of things kind of got put on the shelf, but they're just coming in dribs and drabs because there's no sense of urgency for folks.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to give you an accurate count. I don't think it would be helpful.
Okay, if you can
know,
get
they're
one,
just trickling in.
if you can shoot me one this week, just so we have
Sure,
a sense.
absolutely.
You know, is
She
it,
can
are we in
kinda
the
check, 'cause
40s, are we in the 50s, are we in the 60s?
Yeah, I think some stuff came in when she was out, and it's not really up to date. I'll email you.
Great.
I'll get an update.
But with that said, that will be part of the discussion today, and then, you know, the committee's had some more time with the budget. Steve, I know you and your team have looked at what we call levels as, you know, one item that we often look at to see people are projecting where they think they might be next year, and then I think you and Colleen sit to look to see, you know, is that necessarily attainable? I think sometimes people will hedge a bet and hope that they get to a certain spot. So I know you do some things there. We'll come back to that in a second. Just to put it back into everyone's head, if you go out to Tri-Town School Union to get to the budget, so if you open up a new tab and click on our website, tritownschoolunion.com, and then committees, if you click on in the upper right-hand corner, the drop-down menu for committees, if you click on Middleton School Committee, and then if you scroll down, you'll see the button for the FY '26 proposed budget documents. That will take you out to ClearGov. And we'll give everybody a minute to get there. So again, Tri-Town School Union, upper right-hand corner committees, go to Middleton School Committee. Once you get there, you'll see the button for the budget. And then, once you get there, if you click on that down arrow for the budget overview, on the left-hand side, like the table of contents, right over here. Click on the down caret for budget overview. And then, I'll give folks a second to get there.
Summary.
Yeah, you want to go to Middleton Proposed Budget Details,
Okay.
and that'll take you to the summary sheet. So give folks a second. I know that was a lot of clicking and entering information. So tritownschoolunion.com. When you get there, committees in the upper right-hand corner.
Do you want me to just email this link to everyone? Would that be easier?
Sure.
Okay.
And then if, just while folks are waiting for that to come through, Middleton School Committee is the drop-down. Scroll down a little bit under the pictures and you'll see the button for FY '26 budget.
Okay, I just sent you guys the email, the link to the ClearGov page.
And then we want to find the summaries.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's on Middleton Budget Detail. A budget overview, rather, and then you'll see Middleton Proposed Budget Detail.
We'll open that now, see what it says. Budget overview.
Okay.
And when you do that, that'll take you out to the summary page. And just as a refresher from our meeting,
Okay, thank you.
we are currently at
Yep.
11.65.
And then just go hit that.
PDF the way.
Well, you don't need to, just hit that, and then you can see.
that summary page. So summary page is probably the best place to work from.
Are you there, Joe? Yeah. Okay.
Perfect, thank you,
Don't
guys.
worry about me.
That was like multi-step
Yeah.
clicking and
I'm there.
dragging and so on and so forth. But the summary page is a good page for us to work from. Again, just as a reminder from that Saturday meeting, you can see what we're up in, what we're down in terms of overall percentages. In the overall right now is 11.65. We have a 2.5 guideline, so we're at about 9% early budget discussion. And then now we start to get into the conversation around, will something be coming from special ed stabilization? Will there'll be some tightening up around enrollment? Will there be some tightening up around levels and things like that? So Steve, as that at a backdrop, turn it over to you for additional thoughts before we field questions from the committee or thoughts and things like that.
No, I think that hits it right on, it's right on the head. The only thing I would add to the discussion, when we talk about the guideline, that it was 2%, my understanding is it's 2% plus any increase on the insurance premium. So that does.
2.5 or 2?
I'm sorry?
2.5?
I'm sorry, 2.5. Thank you.
Okay.
2.5 plus any increase on the insurance premium. So that does help. And so we just got to keep an eye out on that and then see how that starts to crystallize as we go forward. But Dr. Morrison hit it all right on the head. And so now it really is the deliberation process, the opportunity for us to field the questions from the committee, to sharpen the pencil and go from there.
Yeah. I mean, looking at this summary sheet, there are expenses that we have to pay, like the special ed for out of district and the transportation. Those are things that we have to pay. The other line items, we can whittle away at, and, I want to provide, the best budget possible, but I also want to provide a budget that is, when we go to override, that has the best chance of passing, because I don't want to come here in June and being like, okay, now we have to make some really big cuts. It's scary for everybody. Looking at enrollment, especially the table that we just looked at with, enrollment going down next year, especially in the first grade section. If we kept it the way it was right now, we would have, right now kindergarten has 15 kids per section. If we kept it with 6 sections next year, it would go down to like 12.8.
Yeah, grade 1, I think you're
Grade
looking at, but
1,
yes.
grade 1. The current kindergartners
Yeah.
moving into grade 1.
Yeah.
There would be, 12.8 students in that grade, which is the lowest of any other section. But if we moved it down to 5, they would be where the kindergarten is right now, which is 15.4.
Yep.
So that's definitely a possibility.
Yep, that's all accurate what you said.
Yeah.
And again, a lot will depend upon that kindergarten enrollment for sure, just seeing, like currently.
Right,
making sure
if
that
kindergarten comes in high, we may need to move that 6th section back to kindergarten.
Correct.
I just have a question. What happens when you do eliminate a section with the teacher? Teacher's relocated somewhere else? I mean, what happens with the teacher that's teaching that extra?
So the worst-case scenario is a person is laid off.
Yeah.
If we have a retirement, then
They-
staff is
Moved
migrates
around.
where the grades are.
Is there some natural attrition too? People have lifestyle changes?
Sure
they
do,
may
yes, they
move, or-
do. Yeah, that's why it's like his worst-case scenario, his
Yeah.
best-case scenario, and yes, things happen in between.
Sometimes you're just not back, like if you have a retirement, you're just not filling that position.
Sure.
Because the numbers dictate that we don't have to fill that position.
Yep.
Or like to Steve's point, if all things remain equal, then, you're in the process of a layoff.
Okay. Just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question on the, would the override stand by itself? Last time it was lumped in
I
with
think
public
that's
safety.
still yet to be determined. I think that would be a discussion with the select board and the
So
FinCom.
the way
Yeah.
that they mentioned it in the meeting is that they want to determine what the numbers are. They want to know, like, is our override as a school going to be $250,000 or $1 million? They want to determine what all the overrides are going to be, to determine whether they're going to do it separately or they're going to do it together.
And whose call is that?
Select board wants more information, right?
Select
They
board
said?
makes that call.
They make that call, yeah.
I think they can certainly, they'll take feedback and input, but I believe select board are the ones to decide how it goes on the, what's called the warrant, Joe,
Yep.
at town meeting. My understanding is Masco also, I think, is going to be an override land as well. So that'll be out there. You know, is it education lumped together? Is it Masco Elementary, something else? I think those are all the conversations in the ensuing months, for sure.
I mean, it's whether people can pick and choose what they prioritize, so that's kind of a,
I'd like to
what's the
see
history in the town? Do they tend to lump them together, or?
Last
they-
year, last time.
Yeah,
They lumped them last
They
year,
do
but
both, do they? I've seen both.
you've seen both?
Yeah, I've seen both. Yeah, just overrides are not a popular thing in Middleton.
Yeah.
Respectfully.
Nice to be separate, I think, because then people care about
It's a
the
fair point. I
education.
mean, you know,
Yeah.
just, that's, historically, that's the challenge with Middleton, overrides.
Yeah. And I think as we finalize this budget and we move, you know, along with getting the word out to the town, I think it's important that we say that, you know, this is a level service budget and, you know, if it doesn't pass, this is what it means, you know, and chances are it's going to mean higher class sizes. I mean, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, there'd be a lot of, I think that would be that's a conversation we have to have.
Yeah.
Before June, because I think what we would have to do, we do this in all three of our towns, like, when you finally land on, okay, let's say the override is, I have no idea what the numbers would be, but just say 750,000, just to make it a round number, somewhat a round number. If the override doesn't pass and we have to reduce $750,000 from the budget, we then want to articulate very early on what that means and what that would be. And then when we do that, we just have to make sure that that's what happens, right? Like that's, I've seen places, other places over the course of my tenure where it's one thing and then another, and it's like, no, if this is what we say we're doing, we've got to follow through with that plan. What we will do for the committee as we make our way through the ensuing months is, because we don't want to, you know, rattle people and get people nervous, we will say to you, this is what $750,000 could look like. We're not saying this is the list. This is an example of what $750,000 looks like. It's a bus, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this, it's this. Just to give you a scope of what, and again, I'm picking a random number, $750,000 looks like. And we will do that across all three towns or any town that we have an override. We will always kind of really try to demonstrate and draw for you what it looks like. But as we get closer to town meeting, we then have to come to some agreement of like, all right, this is what we're saying and this is what we're going with. So that'll be part and parcel of the process. That's something that will happen throughout the coming months. We'll have to have that conversation for sure.
Steve, last year, we were talking about a bus in particular, right? Mm-hmm. Did we end up, I can't remember where that landed. Did we end up not needing it?
So remember we were down on actual drivers, so now we're running 7 buses now.
And do you, like, is that kind of where we should be, what we need? Remember, that was a big conversation last year.
It's a tricky question because it's a place, if, in terms of,
Oh, right, if I remember.
yeah, remember
last
we
year,
share the
yes.
contract with
Yep.
Masco.
Yep.
So if that is a discussion point, really what you may be doing is just shifting the cost from our pocket to Masco, because then they would absorb the cost of an unshared
Okay.
bus. Now, if Masco says they're going to cut a bus, or they're looking at it as an option, then we could look at it. It will further have it'll have a negative impact on morning and afternoon buses and pickup and drop-offs, you know, on both of those campuses in terms of congestion and things of the such.
But we eliminated a bus off the budget last year,
Yes.
correct, to reclaim some.
But
Correct.
Masco also eliminated the bus.
Yes,
So-
it was right, exactly,
Yes.
in concert with Masco. So one in Middleton, if I remember correctly, and 2 in Boxford.
Yeah. So if Masco decided to eliminate a bus, number one, it would have to be a Middleton bus. But that's the only way it would affect.
Us.
Yeah, it
That would affect the
us.
Middleton Elementary.
Yeah, they could decide to eliminate a bus, but that bus is going to be in Topsfield. So.
It just depends, because,
Yeah.
you know, like, they have buses that can cross borders.
Right.
But we don't.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if that comes up, we'll be having the discussion.
There's not anything on your radar right now.
No, no one has communicated, like I have not had any conversations with Masconomet about reducing the bus. It doesn't mean it won't happen or couldn't happen, but that has not happened yet.
And Steve, last year, the override didn't pass, and just, sometimes among the three towns, I can get things confused. Just remind me, the override here was about growth in Middleton. We were looking to grow programming, right?
Yes.
And the override didn't pass. Jen, you didn't end up with K-aids as a result. Jeff, I think that was $85,000. Jeff, you didn't end up with $101,000 worth of power manning enrichment happening because the override didn't pass. So none of those things.
Yeah, there was also
Passed.
an adding a section for third grade too.
Correct.
And that
Thank you, yeah.
didn't go
That
in.
didn't go through. So all those things that were, when the override didn't pass, it wasn't like we just figured out, oh, we can make this work within the budget. None of those things happened, am I correct?
That's correct.
And we weren't able to do that growth.
I'll call it the enrichment initiative, it didn't go forward.
Right.
And so we were able to stay level service. And then we had the special education need that we had to take care of internally.
I think if we convey that to the public, that's just level service this year, but it has to be, in my opinion, a separate item. It has to be separate from the rest of the, but that's not our call, but
Understand,
if
yeah.
you convey that to the parents and the people in this community, that's level service, like, we don't want to go backwards, right, so.
And Steve, is it a fair comment that if a section was cut, it's less than level service? Or is it still level service based upon?
So if you're, this is now an opinion answer.
that's all I'm
If you're
asking
staying within historical class size averages, then I'd say you're still level service.
Level service, okay.
If you're having an impact where it's not the case,
Beyond the historical, okay.
let's say substantially beyond, then okay, now we're talking about
Got it.
Okay.
Sorry, one more question. And you want me to ask a lot
No,
more
no,
questions?
no.
And then the Warren article. So say we ask for, or say they agree that the override is separate for the elementary schools. And then separate from that, we have the Warren article, right? Those don't get lumped all
No.
together. 'Cause
So
they
the
come
warrant
from two
article is
different
just
places.
voted on at town meeting. It's not a ballot question.
And they might decide to fund that, there could be a couple different ways that the town makes a decision on how to fund that, Jackie. It could be a warrant article, it could be free cash, as we go through that process and go through the capital process with them.
And then the special education stabilization fund.
Yes, that could
That
potentially
is
have
like
an,
a third kind of
Yep.
variable, right?
correct.
Okay.
Do we know how much is in the stabilization fund? Are we aware of it?
I don't remember the exact number, but we'll just, to help the committee, we send data to the finance committee, and John Erickson runs his model. And so he's shown me his model with the variations and the regression, and I think the preliminary discussion is like using about 130 some odd thousand based upon historical data and trajectory. So to be determined, so that there's still a ways to go on that discussion.
We have the circuit breaker money coming back next year, though.
Right.
Yes.
So that could replenish.
Exactly, did. Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah, that would be an FY '27.
27.
Right, because FY '26, your circuit breaker will be a little less.
Oh, so
Based
it's
upon the budget that we have, that we're proposing right
27.
now, it's a little less.
Just 27.
Steve, just go back to what you said at the top, just to refresh my recollection. You said there was a 2.5 guideline along with helping with the with the health insurance?
Yes.
So does that mean that if health insurance went from 5% to 10%, that 5% would be supported?
That's the way I understand it.
Okay.
So if we go back to ClearGov, if you want, for the committee, and we look at there's a document I had on there, which was the increase calculation.
What
So that will
table
be
of content?
in the miscellaneous financial information
Yep.
under the budget overview.
Yep.
If you scroll down, and I'm just gonna get there myself, there should be a proposed budget increase calculation.
Yep,
So you see that spreadsheet,
yep.
and I'm just trying to get there. You can see how I calculated it. And so it assumes, when we look at the insurance increase, I have that specific number, that it's increasing 232,000.
Okay.
That the way I'm calculating and understanding them, I'm including that in with the 2.5% increase. So
Okay.
that would give us, in terms of a dollar amount of an increase of 563,125, which is about 3.68. So that's the way I understand it right now, and that's the conversation I've had with the town accountant. And I
Have
asked,
or
I said,
have to?
I'm sorry?
You have had it?
Yes, I've had it.
Okay.
And so when I created the spreadsheet, I sent it to her. She may have a different perspective, but that's the way I understood it.
So that's taking the insurance completely out of this.
Yeah,
So that 3.68%,
yeah. So if to help with the discussion, if that is, let's just say that that's where we are, and that's where the guideline is, that we would be, the difference we'd have is 7.97% from our first draft to the guideline.
okay.
And that's, I think, 1,220,126.
So without the insurance, the guideline is, the override would be just under 8%.
Yes.
Okay.
Not accounting for any pencil sharpening or...
No, and not accounting
Right,
for any money that we
or,
may get from
special
this
ed.
Stabilization, right.
Okay,
Not including it,
not included.
not including it.
Correct.
Okay. Now, at what point, or at any point, I know in past years you would send us like a recommendation sheet of areas where we could kind of sharpen our pencil a little bit. Is that going to be happening this year, or is
Oh, yes.
this-
Yeah,
okay.
no, we're going to continue on that, because, we want to keep the committee informed and help move the process forward.
Okay.
So as we talk about, like, for example, the classroom section, we can start working up those dollars, the levels. So I have that audit has been done. Now I just want to take the dollars and apply it to the number of FTEs that probably won't move. And I didn't want to use a round number, because when you look at the salary grid, there's just, when you move from here to here, most of them are like over 3,000. But when you go from M60 to M75, it's only 1,300. So I didn't want to overestimate for the committee, but I'll bring that back to them too. I'll bring it back to you so we can put that on the list. I'll
Okay.
put a section on the list. And then I'll take,
I would say, Steve, our process and our practice has been, and if you can have Colleen work on this tomorrow, can you have her set up a Zoom with the Middleton team, leadership team?
Yep.
And I think we've always kind of done that as a group.
Yep.
And so let's have that conversation either the week of the 10th or the week of the 24th, so that when we're back to Middleton on March 3, we have some recommendations and things for the committee to consider. So we always say we build it as a team, and we just have discussions around any dialogue around reduction as well. So if she can pull the Middleton team together on a Zoom,
we'll do.
let's do that, and we come back to the meeting on the 3rd with more information. Would that be helpful?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, thank you. Yeah. Okay. Okay, you went over the Ned stack, there's nothing in the correspondence folder?
Nope.
Okay, would anyone like to make a motion to, accept the bills and payroll as presented?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, and now we are moving into executive session.
Yeah, you got it there.
So,
Just,
I have to use the restroom.
okay, just give me just one second.
Oh,
Let me just
sorry.
read this so we can
Sorry,
roll call.
sure.
So I will make a motion to move into executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares. Would anyone like to second that?
Second that motion.
Okay, Jackie?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Michelle? Aye.